We're going to begin this lesson on family literacy and language development by exploring the concept of emergent literacy. One of the things that recent research has helped us understand is that children don't wait until they go to school to try to make sense of this whole how do I learn how to read thing. They are very aware of print from the time they're very small, and they try to make meaning of that print. They see print in their homes, they see environmental print in their communities, they see the people in their lives interact with print, they've had storybooks read to them. All of those things help them understand the function and the meaning of print. One big difference, however, between emerging into reading and emerging into language is that children need materials to understand how print works. Most often those materials are storybooks, but the environmental print and the other print also has a huge influence on children's understanding of the power of print. Researchers who looked at how young children interact with storybooks have developed 4 categories of development that precede those traditional views of learning how to read. What's so interesting about these stages, these categories, is that it's not so much connected to the child's stage of cognitive, physical, social, or emotional development, but is very connected to the child's exposure to books. Has the child had books read aloud to him or her? Has the child grown up on a loving lap listening to stories? Are the same books read over and over? Are books read every day? All of those sweet and simple, very early interactions with print help children get ready to be very successful when they come to school. So we have the 4 categories here on this slide, and what I'm going to do is go through each one of them and then give you an example of what it looks like. The first stage, the earliest stage, is attending to pictures and not forming stories. So this little guy is got his book. It's a soft book so that when he puts it in his mouth, it's not going to hurt him. He's not going to hurt his head when he is trying to get it into his mouth to taste that book. He just is enjoying books. He's learning about how you turn pages, but he's not attending to the pictures yet. He's not forming a story. All those early book handling skills, like knowing which side the book opens on, which way the pages turn, where the prints start, haven't started to happen yet. So here's an example of Dr. Enz's granddaughter named Briar, and Briar is reading to her grandpa. And she turns the page and points to the bears and says, "Mommy, Daddy, Daddy, chair, beds, Mommy Bear." And then Briar pointed to Goldilocks and said, "Briar has blonde hair also." So when you look at this, you realize that she's relating to Goldilocks because Briar has long golden hair as well. She was identifying with the character in the stories. The next stage is attending to the pictures and forming an oral story. So at this stage, the child looks at the pictures using some intonation that sounds like he or she is telling a story, but the listener probably can't make sense of it unless the pictures were there to provide the internal structure. Here we have Dr. Enz's grandson, Robbie, also talking about the Goldilocks and the 3 bears. And he tells his aunt that the 3 bears have a nice house. They eat breakfast and then they go for a walk. Then this not very nice girl comes into the bear's house and the girl eats everyone's cereal. so he was definitely having a great time sort of retelling the story. And he was very accurate, but he wasn't following per se the script of the story, nor was he following the refrain of the story. The third stage is that of attending to pictures and forming a written story. So, by this time, after exposure to many, many storybooks, the child can look at the book's pictures, and the wording and the intonation sound a lot like reading. It's so sophisticated that the listener doesn't even have to see the pictures to follow the story. And here we have another example. Goldilocks and the Three Bears is so rich on so many levels. And here we have Annie. Annie is Dr. Enz's daughter. And when Annie was 4, and she had heard the same story 2 zillion times, she would reread Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and sometimes she would read it to her mom, and more often than not, she would read it to her little sister, and she would go, "Once upon a time, there were this bear family. Daddy's bear's cereal was too hot, so they decided to go for a walk. Then, turning the page, this girl Goldie comes into their home and starts to eat the cereal." So actually, you're hearing that she knows the refrains of the story, too hard, too soft, just right, and she would repeat it over and over again. That's a very important step in becoming a traditional reader. A traditional reader. Here we have a child attending to the print rather than to the pictures and is attempting to read the story. So this is, although we never want to lose the wonder of incredible picture books, we do want our children to emerge to this level where they can read independently.